I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Thursday morning. Well, the Knicks did it. They win game one. Got off to a great start. Got completely obliterated at the end of the first period. Regained control in the second period, then got obliterated again before halftime. We're down 14 in the third, tied it up going to the fourth, and finally won the game. But not before they blew an 8-point lead. There were so many runs in that game. Back and forth they went. I find it odd that anyone can draw anything definitive from that game. I mean, you want to say positive things about the Knicks. They won game one. You ought to say positive things about them. That was old gold to win game one. But there were so many runs. There were so many stretches where one team seemed like they were in complete control, and then the other team was in complete control. I did think it was a little easier to understand what was going on with the Spurs. Their first run was because Harper came in the game and was red hot. Their second run in the second quarter was because Champagne hit 5 of 6 3-pointers in one stretch. They got to get Wembayama going, and they got to get Fox going. That was, to me, two glaring problems for them in this game. They only scored 95 points. 95 points a game is not going to win this series. They only scored 40 points in the second half, and Wembayama was 6 of 21 shooting the ball. Fox was 3 of 13. Now, Wembayama got to the line a lot. His 6 of 21 might have been better, but he got fouled. So the shots didn't go, and he hit the free throws. He did have 26 points. But, man, when he's shooting 30% from the floor and Darren Fox is shooting, I don't know what 3 of 13 is. What is that, 22%, 23%, something like that? Yeah, they got to get him going. Fox hit 3 wide-open threes early in the game. And, you know, shooters' confidence is a funny thing. He hits 2 or 3 of those. It's probably a completely different night. But he didn't hit him, and he only took 1 more 3 the rest of the game. And he tried to go to the hoop, but he was 3-9 going to the hoop. Now, maybe it's nerves. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's just one game. You know, and the second half looked a lot worse than the first. So we'll see if they can pull it together. For the Knicks, it was they got scares, man. Brunson going out, somebody falling into his knee. That was bad, but he came back and got his ankle stepped on and kept going and ended up with 30 points. Did not shoot the 3 well. Really, neither team did. The Knicks, 31%, and the Spurs, 26% from 3. Really just, you know, not much there. The Spurs rebounded the Knicks, but not embarrassingly so, and it was kind of offset by the fact that the Spurs ended up with more turnovers, so they just kind of offset each other there. So now the question is, is anything we saw in that game sustainable? Champagne probably can't shoot it like that. Now, he did take some more threes in the second half as they were trying to rally, or in the fourth quarter when they were trying to rally. He had a 5 of 10 from 3, which is still good, but really was 5 of 6 in quick succession. A lot of talking and making faces and like, dude, it's a long game, man. Don't celebrate now. What are you doing? And it's possible what we saw there was Spurs youth and the Knicks experience. And you're saying we didn't see it in the last series. Well, maybe that's because the Thunder had injuries at the end of the series. We can go around and around and just chase our tail forever with this stuff. But the Knicks 1-0 and they're off today, and they'll play game 2 tomorrow. Coming up tonight, it is Game 2 in the Stanley Cup Final after Vegas won the first one in Carolina. PK and I had Greg Wyshynski on from beautiful Raleigh, North Carolina, during yesterday's show. We will play that interview for you next. His take on the final, what he saw in Game 1, why it wasn't what he expected, and how this all ties back to your Utah Mammoth and how far away are they from competing at a much higher level and thinking about a Stanley Cup themselves. We'll get to all of that next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did you have to fight a dragon?
Nope, she bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on Carvana. Delivery fees may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
DJ and PK, it's time to welcome Greg Wyshynski back to the show, senior NHL writer at ESPN. Greg, good morning.
Good morning. Greetings from Raleighwood here in North Carolina. It's a glamorous place. I know that the other city in this series gets a lot of shine for being glamorous, but let me tell you what. Raleigh, North Carolina, baby. That's the glitz and glamour in this series.
Well, we know when they wanted to go big time, Andy and Barney would go into Raleigh, and they'd party.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. I've been thinking a lot about Mayberry lately because of the death of Ted Turner and the fact that the Andy Griffith Show when I was a kid would start at like 6:05 on Turner Broadcasting System. And the reason he did that is because he didn't want people flipping around the channel. So I've been thinking a lot about Andy and Barney lately, actually.
And Barney had to watch out because they say nothing good happens after midnight. I think for Barney, a lot of times nothing good happened when he went to Raleigh.
Well, a lot of good stuff happened for the Golden Knights last night when they went to Raleigh. Let me tell you that.
I would say a lot of good stuff happened to you. I'm sure you've covered good games, bad games, and mediocre games. That was pretty wild. Literally from the opening minute. And the thing that shocked me is these two teams defensively have been awesome. The last two series, I think Vegas given up 2 goals a game, and Carolina's given up less than that while going 12-1 in the Eastern playoffs. And then 9 goals? I mean, what the heck happened? Yeah. I mean, obviously there are a couple of really bad giveaways that you can't say, well, that's on the defense because the giveaways were horrific. But nonetheless, there were some major mistakes.
It's a combination of two things. I mean, I asked Seth Jarvis of the Hurricanes that question last night, like, did you expect there to be this much scoring? And he said, look, man, this is like 2 really good, deep offensive teams. Like we know what Vegas has, where they've got guys like Thomas Hertl and Mark Stone playing on their third line. But, Carolina was the best offensive team Rod Brindamore ever coached this season insofar as their offensive depth. So it was there on both sides to have this kind of game. But that being said, I think a lot of people expected game one at the very least to be a bit more of a chess match. And I think you had the other part of the equation last night, which is that the Golden Knights forecheck and pressure really rattled Carolina into making some regrettable mistakes all over the ice. And on the other side, as much as obviously Freddie Anderson had a rough go of it, giving up 5 goals, I thought Carter Hart was a sieve last night. Like, I was very unimpressed with the game that he had. And there were some goals that he let by that he probably should have stopped. So all those things combined for it to be an incredibly high-scoring game one, which, for those of you who wager out there, beat the over in the second period, which is not something that you'd expect between these two teams.
Yeah, that's funny when you say that in the second period. You look at now obviously we've been following Vegas very closely because that's going to be forever and ever the Mammoths' first playoff opponent. And, it was a tight series. It was fun. The last game got away a little bit, but, they were actually up in the series for a bit. And so we kind of think, oh, well, the Mammoth, man, they're going to end up giving them the best round or series. We'll see how it plays out. But Vegas, to me, with the coaching change, with just a few weeks to go, I'm wondering, how did they catch this lightning in a bottle like this?
So that's a great point, which is that it is lightning in a bottle. And I think that the Utah series might have been when they were the most vulnerable. Tortorella comes in with what was it, like 8 games left in the season. And, he takes over, he puts in his system. They're still learning it. They're still learning about each other. Carter Hart, I think, like I said, he had a rough ride last night, but his round 1 was his worst round. He's gotten progressively better as the playoffs have gone on. Torts came in at a time when things were starting to kind of trend in the right direction a little bit for Vegas, especially from a health perspective. The return of William Karlsson, their lineup, a guy that was one of the original Golden Misfits back when they were an expansion team, really kind of resets their lineup in a pretty great way. It allows Mitch Marner to play on the wing. Karlsson's a great two-way center. It really allowed them to sort of reset their lineup in the way that it should be. And so they're getting healthier. They're playing a little bit better. Torts comes in. He gives them the kick in the rear that they need to kind of focus on their details and play aggressive hockey. And again, like Utah caught them at the right time. I think the first round was when they were most vulnerable, but then you see what they did against Anaheim, and then obviously you see what they did against, half of Colorado, because the other half should have been in a hospital bed during that series with how many injuries they had. And then we see last night the trend continues.
There's a part of me that looks at this and thinks, well, Utah was basically in the middle of the standings in the regular season, and they didn't have any playoff experience. They got knocked out in the first round. There's clearly a tier of teams in the West that are better than them, and it's a long road to go. But then you watch what Vegas is doing, and you're thinking, how big is the gap given the random nature of the sport and the playoffs? We've seen hot teams before. Like, how far away are the Mammoth? I'm trying to read this.
Well, there is a gap, and I think one of the things that you heard from people after watching that Vegas series from around the NHL is, the size differential between Vegas and Utah and Vegas, some other teams in the West. I mean, if there's a trend in the NHL, it's this big physical team. Florida winning back-to-back cups with the way that they played, Vegas playing the way that they play with a bit of size and skill. And so, that's one thing that maybe Utah should take away from that series, is just to kind of maybe get a little bit bigger. But the other thing that's really interesting about Utah right now, and if you want to use Vegas as the proxy for this, Vegas has built this team not through the draft and not through prospects, but by trading away all of those things to get elite players that are in their prime. And, one of the things that Bill Armstrong's going to have to kind of figure out is how much of this deep prospect pool will eventually bubble up to be on the Mammoth roster, and how much of it could he then turn around and trade to upgrade parts of his roster in the way that Vegas has been aggressive, and in some ways in the way that Carolina has been aggressive too in making some of those deals. So they're blessed with a lot of really good players down, in the minor leagues and college and Canadian junior. They're just going to have to start to figure out whether they're going to let these guys ripen and be part of the team at a low contract cost, or turn them around into higher priced veteran players.
Of all the playoff sports that we have, the most fickle thing in terms of momentum, I think, is found in hockey. Get your opinion on it. We talk about momentum, but momentum can change so quickly in hockey. Is there really such a thing as momentum?
I think there is. And John Tortorella actually mentioned that in his press conference last night. Yeah, the idea that, and I think in his case, momentum is like, let's take care of these guys before they figure out what they did wrong. Carolina is a good hockey team. I mean, they were 12-1 in the Eastern Conference. They got out to that 2-0 lead last night. You could tell that they were rattled. You could tell that they were off their details, and there are things that they can clean up. And I think what Tortorella is saying is, momentum is on our side in the sense that we have a 1-0 lead. If we take a 2-0 lead back to Vegas, chances are we're going to win this series. But, now Carolina is going to have to really kind of dig in a little bit and figure out what was so magical about their run in the East, and can they replicate some of those things in this series against what is easily the best opponent that they've played. But again, like you said, I mean, momentum is a tricky thing in the NHL because, it could carry you through a few games in a series, or it's something that a goaltender could stop with one great night. It's always a tricky thing to measure when you're in the playoffs.
And I would have thought that Carolina was doing exactly what they wanted. I mean, they just didn't allow Montreal to get that many shots off, and they held Vegas to 4 shots in the first period. So in a way, I think they have momentum. But does that come back to where you talk about big physical defense, gave them problems, they lost the puck in some really bad spots, and that's why the momentum flips so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, the game plan last night for Vegas was pressure them on the puck as much as you can, hit them as much as you can in their own zone, disrupt the way they break out of their zone. And they weren't doing that in the first 10 or 11 minutes of the game. And then John Tortorella kind of went up and down the bench and in a quite animated way gave his guys a refresher on what they should be doing in the game. And then, like you said, I mean, Carolina was definitely doing Carolina things in the first period insofar as the restriction on shots on goal. But then you look in the second period and all of a sudden, Vegas had crept within like 2 shots of Carolina for the game. And so things definitely turned as the game went on, and Carolina was unable to do the things that they usually do to dominate while Vegas exerted their will. And so it's going to be on Carolina to either figure out how to get back to that puck control, spend all game in the other team's zone kind of hockey, or they're going to have to figure out something tactically to not get rattled when Vegas is doing that to them.
I look at Carter Hart, and he's been something that people have pointed to as stabilizing Vegas as the season went on, right? And as I'm watching, and then boom, the goal right off the bat, and then later on, I'm thinking this isn't one of his better games compared to what we've seen. But yet, after they take the lead, he gets that incredible save where he gets the glove on it and flips it up in the air. And I kind of thought, well, it wasn't his best game, but when he had to have it, he had it, right?
Yeah. And my mantra for the playoffs and goaltending is always like, you don't have to steal a series for me. You just have to not lose it for me, And so, there are moments last night where I thought Hart kept the Hurricanes in the game with some of the pucks he didn't stop. That one shot from Gostisbehere that went through a Vegas player's legs, that's almost an unscreened shot that he obviously should stop, and it nearly cost him the third period. But then he comes back and has that amazing save, obviously, on Jarvis later in the period when they needed it. And, beyond that, Mitch Marner with an incredible block with his skate in the waning minutes of the game to maybe prevent a goal. So you're right. I mean, essentially, the performance wasn't great. If you look at the analytics, he demonstrably had a worse game than Freddie Anderson, who I think his defense really let him down more than anything else. But he came away with the W, and he made the stops at the right time that they needed.
What adjustments do you expect in Game 2 from either team, or is it simply with Carolina more poise on the puck and Vegas just keep doing what you're doing, or are there going to be some wrinkles?
Yeah, I wonder if Carolina is going to tweak their breakouts a little bit, just try to change some things up tactically, because I think the Golden Knights have them game planned pretty good right now. Like I said, there are some things that are just going to get cleaned up naturally insofar as the nerves aren't going to be there. Maybe some of these guys aren't going to play as average games as they played in Game 1, knowing that the stakes are now even higher with the Golden Knights leading 1-0 in this series. I think the pickle for Carolina right now is there's one part of their team that's really not working, and that's their top line with Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho, and Seth Jarvis. They've been able to get away with that for 3 rounds, basically, because of how good the rest of the team is playing. But, last night, that outside of that one shift in the third where Hart makes that great save, they were a complete non-factor, and in fact were ineffective, giving up the puck after a minute, less than a minute in the zone and turning the puck over. I mean, they were really bad. And the problem for them is there's really kind of no way to fix that line with breaking it up, because you don't want to mess with your checking line. You don't want to mess with Taylor Hall's line, because those have been great. And so those 3 have to kind of figure it out. And Rod Brindamore said last night, you need your top guys to hit the scoreboard. It's not good enough to be putting shots on goal or whatever. You need results, and that line has not gotten results for 4 rounds now.
You look at one of the stats you had in your story, 75%. You win, you go on here. So are you favoring Vegas? You still think it's see what happens?
I still think it's see what happens. I mean, I picked Carolina in 6. I'm not feeling great about it after Game 1, if we're being honest. But I'll stick with it. I covered Carolina for the last 2 rounds. I think they've shown a lot of resiliency. I mean, don't forget they lost Game 1 of the Montreal series in the conference final pretty spectacularly. And that was one where you're like, oh my God, is this a fraud, or are we watching a team that is going to see their fortunes change. I still think they did enough last night in a positive way that it encourages you. They can figure some things out. I love the way that they battled back in that game and, knotted up the score a bunch of times. But this is a different, they talked about it before the series that this is going to be a different challenge. And Jarvis said it last night. It's the Stanley Cup final. Like it should be your toughest series. And it clearly is. And they're going to have to really adjust to, depth of talent on the Golden Knights side. And also just how they can really disrupt what you do with that Tortorella system and the way that they pressure the puck.
It's interesting you say it's clearly the toughest series because if you look at the regular season results, the East was so good with 5 teams over 100 points. And Vegas, I don't even know if they knew they were getting in the playoffs a month before the playoffs started. But here we are. You just think it's hands down this is the Carolina's biggest test.
It is, and here's the thing: like, there's a lot of people in the West that didn't watch the Hurricanes at all in the playoffs that really think they got an easy ride, and I'm like, no, man. Like that Ottawa team in the first round, people thought they could be a dark horse in the East, and Carolina swept them. And then the Flyers aren't great, but they had the league's hottest goalie at the time, and they got swept. And then Montreal comes hopping in, and they're on fire. They won 2 consecutive 7-game series. And after a bad first game that came after the longest layoff between 2 rounds the NHL has seen in 107 years, so they're a little rusty. Carolina kicked their teeth in for 4 games. So, I still am hopeful that we're going to see a bounce back here and have a good long series between these 2 teams because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's been some brevity in these playoffs insofar as the series go. But last night was discouraging. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like the depth and the aggressiveness of that Golden Knights team and the swagger with which they play, I think were things that Carolina maybe wasn't prepared for.
When I think of where you're at in the country, I think of college basketball and probably auto racing. I'm wondering, what's the level of buzz over this series? Is it just taking over?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is a place where they had a moment of silence before one of the games for Bush, and then they had the arena is literally on the NC State campus here in Raleigh. The buzz is interesting because I think when you go through some of these neighborhoods and you're visiting businesses, it doesn't feel like it does in some towns where it's inescapable, when you see flags all over the place and people in jerseys and stuff. But then, once you get to the arena, it feels like you're in the greatest hockey town ever. I mean, everybody gets there early to tailgate. People love this team. The arena is loud. You could probably count on one hand the number of Golden Knights fans that were in the building last night, which isn't often the case when you have a Stanley Cup final. You usually have people spending thousands of dollars to get into these games, but it wasn't the case last night. So I like this market a lot, and it, there's a certain amount of sentimentality I have towards Rod Brindamore and his team. I mean, he's coached here for 15 years as an assistant and as a head coach, and that was after winning a Stanley Cup as a player in Carolina. I think there's some stat where there's only been 2 playoff wins that this franchise has had that he hasn't been a part of. It's crazy. So, there's a connection between this coach and the community, a connection between this team, the community, and it's definitely on display on a game night here.
And yet, you're going to get out of town just as it hits 90, and you're going to fly to Vegas, and it's going to be 105 degrees or whatever. So you say the sentimentality, but
Listen, I live in Brooklyn. Summer in New York is lovely, but it's also like walking through a waterfall as far as the humidity goes. So I have never had an issue with the dry heat in Vegas. It feels like a sauna to me. It feels so nice. And so I'm a big Vegas guy to begin with. I've always kind of connected with that town for whatever reason. It's been kind of a fun thing to have it be such a part of my life because the Golden Knights made the conference final in 5 of their 9 years of existence. And again, you talk about the environment here. I mean, as you guys know, the environment in Vegas for those games is just tremendous. So I'm looking forward to games 3 and 4 at the very least. Who knows how many we'll have after that, but we know there's at least 2 in Vegas coming up.
I'm looking, Greg, at a list from people from Matawan, New Jersey, and you're right there in terms of fame. Maybe Jim Jeffcoat. Do you remember him?
Jim Jeffcoat, yeah. Jim
Dallas
Jeffcoat
Cowboys.
is
Arizona State.
Yeah, and I believe they count Sonny from WWE back in the Attitude Era as being part of Matawan, I think, last time I checked. Yeah, no, I now here's the thing, though. I got an email from my old high school last year that said I had been nominated for my high school's Hall of Fame.
Nice.
And I had to put all this stuff together. It took a while. I think I might have missed a deadline, but I sent it in. I never heard back. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not that prominent at the end of the day.
I think you are. My high school doesn't even know I'm alive, so you know.
Well, if you get in, man, my best man at my wedding got into the West Deptford, New Jersey, his high school Hall of Fame, and
you go.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a big soccer coach.
I assume that it's like baseball. There's a big room with plaques, and people walk around, silently in awe of the greatness of the alumni of Matawan Regional High School. But I mean, they never wrote back, unless it's in my spam folder somewhere. They never wrote back. So who knows?
Well, Greg, we appreciate the time and enjoy the series and enjoy Vegas.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
There's Greg Wyshynski. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Jeremy Branham talking college football. So intriguing. What does Jeremy Branham know about the Houston Cougars? Can a team that played a pretty soft schedule last year but won 10 games doing it, are they ready for another big step? That is next. Stay with us right here on The Zone.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did you have to fight a dragon?
Nope, she bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.
DJ and PK, we are joined now by Jeremy Branham, Houston Cougars football sideline reporter and host on ESPN 97.5 in Houston. Houston is coming off a 10-3 season. They've got their quarterback back. They got the coach back. They've got very high hopes. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning.
Jeremy,
you guys are doing well.
We are doing well. Did I underestimate the enthusiasm for Houston Cougar football this year?
No, I don't think you underrated it. Everybody's excited. It's been a little while since Houston was, I would consider them, a contender at the top of their league. Yet last year they kind of proved a lot of doubters wrong, certainly had more wins than many anticipated them having. And they return a good chunk of the players that won 10 games last year. So, no, I don't think you undersold it at all.
One guy that I'm extremely intrigued about is this running back, Hughes. Now, he was at Oregon, but before that, he was at Tulane, and he ran for, I think it's about 1,400 yards each season at Tulane. And it just so happens that his coach at Tulane is the coach at Houston. So he comes in my mind, as somebody to watch. What are expectations for him?
Yeah, I think probably what he did at Tulane, not necessarily in terms of the volume of stats. I don't think anybody's, hey, you got to run for 1,400 yards this year, but just to be the bell cow, to be the guy, to be RB1. You look at the numbers that he had at Tulane, and you would expect him to do that at Houston. But then you throw in the caveat that you mentioned that his head coach was Willie Fritz, and Willie really wanted him when he entered the portal. So he co-signs, the name, So he co-signs Mekhi Hughes to come into Houston and to be the number one guy. So I think that there's a lot of expectation for him. I think there's a lot of excitement for him. Grass isn't always greener, right? Didn't have the best year at Oregon. Oregon's got a stable of running backs that are all very good, had trouble getting on the field. But I think he's going to have a big bounce back year. And if Willie wanted him back, then he's a really good football player.
So if you got a running back that the coach really believes in. You got a quarterback everybody believes in with over 1,500 snaps of experience. Tell me how good the O-line is, good enough that they held some out, Shadre Hurst at least, maybe somebody else too, out of the spring game. So even though when you read the reports that it was kind of hit and miss with the O-line, well, it wasn't the first string O-line completely. How good is that O-line? How much depth is there? Because with really good quarterback and running back play, this offense could be flying.
Yeah, this will be the second year in a row that Houston is relying on the transfer portal to beef up their offensive line. You can look at that a couple of different ways. You'd like to build up that depth. You like to have the development on the offensive line. The other way you can look at it is you have a coaching staff that is good at evaluating that can go into the portal and patch together a pretty good O-line. You mentioned Hurst, who you look at a bunch of the different rankings of top transfers in the portal this past season, and Hurst is one of the top offensive linemen. So that was a big get. Ebiselli, you bring him back after he had a bit of an injury. Agnello and the interior offensive line is a guy that actually played a good amount last year on the offensive line for Houston. So it's a matter of evaluating the talent in the portal. Maybe I'm a bit of a homer. Maybe I have Cougar goggles, but Fritz has always been good at evaluating talent, especially in the portal, that they have college tape on. So it's a talented offensive line. It might be one of the more talented offensive lines they've had in a while. But anytime you're putting together a bunch of new faces, and the offensive line's about cohesion, it's a unit. It's a fist, not 5 individual fingers. You always have to worry a bit about how they're going to come together. But they're very talented. I think it's a talented group.
Defensively, tell us about linebacker Siona Fotu, who is from Salt Lake, played high school ball here, was at Utah for a bit, and is now with the Cougars.
Yeah, great story. Great kid. I do the Willie Fritz coaches shows as well, and we had him on as a guest last year. Just I think he wins fans over anytime that he speaks. He's got a great background. His story's phenomenal, and he's just a really good football player. Hard-nosed. He's always in the right spot. Is he going to be a top 3-round NFL draft pick? No. But is he that guy that you're going to count on in the middle of your defense week in, week out? Yeah. So he's just incredibly solid, a really nice piece to this defense that took a step up last year. And, being in his second year in the program, I would expect some more growth from him.
I would think that with first off, so many people in Houston and so much talent in Houston, that I would expect there's a heavy Texas flavor to this roster. But I start looking, and there's multiple, Louisiana, lots of kids from Alabama. They are cast. And there are a ton of Texans, but Florida, and actually 2 kids from Utah, at least 2, maybe there's more, but I've seen 2 from Utah. So are they really building this as the hometown team, or you don't dare do that because Houston's so over-recruited?
No, I think they're trying to make it a hometown team, but you can't ignore everybody else, right? Especially in the era of the transfer portal. Yeah. Last year, I don't know if it's still the case. I would imagine it still is, but Willie would talk a lot about how ever since he took the Houston job, he hasn't had to jump on a plane to go recruit. And you can drive to Louisiana, maybe Alabama, but with the portal, you're not really, if a guy's a junior in the transfer portal, you're not going out to watch him.
Right.
You're watching his college tape, you're watching him on film. So no, there's a heavy emphasis on local players, and Willie would tell you that he still wants to build. He believes in high school recruiting. He believes in the development. He believes in that setting the foundation of his program. But you do need to fill holes. You can't ignore the portal in today's day and age of college football. So if they feel like they need a starter at position XYZ, he's going to go find a starter at position XYZ. But he totally believes in the foundation of the Houston Cougar football program being built by high school recruits in the area, specifically Houston. They recruit Louisiana well because he's had great ties in Louisiana, dating back to his Tulane days. So he believes in the local kid, and he believes in the development of the local kid, while also not ignoring that he needs to go out and find talent in the portal if it exists. So he believes in the hometown and in the homegrown player, which I think a lot of people in the program love, because they've always you ask Houston fans, build a wall around Houston, we could be great, which is true, but it goes back to your other point too about how it's a very recruited area.
Well, you speak of filling holes. It looks like they could have up to probably 5 transfers starting on defense, a couple up front, defensive line, and then on the back end, Jalen Mayo and Javion White. I'm assuming those guys come in and fill legitimate needs for the Cougars.
Yeah, especially at corner. You lose your McCutcheon last year was their best corner. You lose a couple of pieces in the depth there as well. So Mayo is kind of looked at as to be the McCutcheon replacement. Willie hired the cornersback coach from Texas State where Mayo was at. So he brought him over with him, and then Mayo entered the portal and then came over, wanted to try his hand at playing a little higher level football. I said Texas State. It was Stephen F. Austin. Pardon me there on the Mayo and the coach. But, no, it goes back to the evaluating the player, right? Yeah, I think that's what the transfer portal has kind of turned into is, you can bring in a collection of players, but if you miss the assessment and you miss the scout on the player, then you're probably wasting a scholarship. So if you can hit more than you miss, obviously you have a better chance of, being good in the portal. Willie was good at it last year. You brought up Wigman a little bit earlier. Several other players. Amare was really good, brought him in for the portal. So it's about evaluating the right guys that are going to fit your system. There's always going to be a little bit of the unknown. It's always going to be a kind of a wild card, right? We really like what we see from this kid. We get a good impression from this kid. You vet it the best you can, but you never truly know. So it comes down to the coach's evaluation of the player. I think Willie's really good at it. Mayo's drawing really good reviews. There's a couple other transfers that will be key contributors, like you mentioned, on this team. It kind of all play out.
One of the transfers, and I don't know how much competition he has, is Evan Noel, the kicker. I mentioned 6-1 in one-score games, so the kicking game figures prominently, and Noel transferring in from Florida. Yeah, no,
Willie's a special teams guy. He puts a major emphasis on the third phase of the game. He thinks that's very important. It is, right? I mean, how many? You mentioned the one-score games. The punting side of things can flip the field. The return side of things can totally change your average field position for a game. And Fritz is, he's into the weeds about all the numbers too. If he can start 5 yards better in his average field position, he's going to do everything in his power to get it done. He is pretty meticulous and about putting his team in the best position to give him the best odds of having a scoring drive. So he's a big believer in the kicking game. It's something he takes very seriously. If he put emphasis on a kid to bring him in, he values the guy. I know there's a Houston kicker on the team too that they brought in from the high school ranks. He's been in the program a couple of years now. That probably will compete. But I imagine too that Noel will probably be the guy.
The quarterback, I think one of the keys to success on your team is look how many games your starting quarterback starts. And he started every one of them, right? And I think that makes a difference. And I got to admit, I wasn't sure what to expect, but he had a very nice season. I'm thinking, though, that was, obviously last year, and now he should be able to up his game there. How much more is expected of Wegman?
I think that's a fair assessment of him coming to Houston, and I think a lot of the fans didn't really know what to expect either. And they knew him well. Wigman's a Houston kid, went to high school in the Houston area. He didn't go too far at his first college stop. They're in College Station. It's an hour and a half away from Houston. So people were aware of his collegiate career and kind of, the ups and downs at A&M, where he had some flashes. He showed some things. But none of those 3 years he was there, I don't think you would, there's nothing really to write home about. So they knew he was incredibly talented, 5-star kid, oozes potential. Can he put it all together? Also had some injury concerns at Texas A&M. So can he stay healthy? I think was a fair question going into last year. And he answered them all. It was really solid, really solid. And kind of like we were talking earlier, I don't think he's going to be a top 3-round pick in the NFL, but a really good college quarterback. Knows how to run an offense, knows where to put the ball, had some good targets last year. I think he'll have some good targets again this year. I think you hit it right on the head with the experience thing. I think experience is vital for that position, especially playing Power 4 football. And you hear more of these NFL teams, too, that they want to draft these college kids that have played a lot of games because they feel they're more ready, no matter what their potential is or their talent is. So, his growth, I think he's playing pretty close to his ceiling. I think that he can cut down the turnovers maybe a little bit. I don't think that Houston wants to, be a team that, they're not the air raid. They're not going to run 100 plays a game. They believe in controlling the game. They believe in, managing the game. So I don't know if the numbers will look better, but I think, watching him run the offense could look a little bit smoother, although it was pretty smooth a year ago.
Jeremy Branham joining us, Houston Cougars football sideline reporter and host on ESPN 97.5 in Houston. You talk about having some good targets. I'm always surprised at how many programs don't seem to really value and recruit tight ends. A major matchup problem when you get the right guy, and a receiver who's right in a quarterback's face, usually easier throws. They tend to be big targets. Patrick Overmeyer transferring in from UTSA, 6'5", 230. I'm not sure how he would have been overlooked and why someone like that, if he's really good, wouldn't have been in the Big 12 in the first place. Maybe he's a late bloomer or whatever. Does he just look great out there in spring drills? Or do you think there's really something to him?
Yeah, I think there's something there. I think he uses a lot of potential. He was a bit of a late bloomer. And I think he played receiver even in high school, if I remember reading correctly, and then kind of grew into the tight end position. Redshirted his first year at UTSA, still putting on muscle and growth. But Houston had a great tight end last year, and Tanner Koziel, as y'all know, led the team in catches, draft pick by Jacksonville. Houston does believe in the tight end, so you and Willie Fritz have the same mindset when it comes to that. Plus, you'll see Houston run some 12 personnel. They'll do some double tight end stuff. So they do value the tight end, and I completely agree with you. I think the tight end can be a quarterback's best friend. And Willie loves the size of that position too. But you saw that with Koziel. You'll see that again with Overmeyer. Overmeyer's best football is in front of him. 6'5", 230. He's a Houston kid as well. So another Houston guy coming back home. But the thoughts on him is that he looks a lot like Koziel. What I've read and what I've heard about him is that he looks a lot like Koziel. He hasn't had the production of Koziel. Maybe it wasn't a tight end friendly offense at UTSA. Don't watch a ton of Roadrunner football, but they think that he can. I don't think he's going to have the year that Koziel had. If I'm being completely honest with you, I think it'd be tough for Overmeyer, whose career high in catches is 30-ish, with 350 yards, to put up a 74 catch season. But I think he's going to be the bona fide tight end number one for Houston and take a huge step forward.
Tell us about this hotshot quarterback freshman who came on campus early, played well in the spring game. I think some people say he might be the number one freshman coming in at quarterback, and I don't know how much time he'll get this year, but seems like next year would be his time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him with 4-game rule where you can play in now in college football and still preserve a red shirt. I imagine we'll see him some. Do we see him in more than 4 games? I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see how they deploy him, and a lot of that will depend on the health of Connor Wigman as well. If Wigman gets hurt and has to miss a month, well, then Henderson's more than likely going to be your starter. But if Wigman stays healthy, I imagine they would like to preserve that redshirt year. We'll see. But, yeah, it depends on which recruiting rankings you would look at. Some rankings had him as the number one recruit in all of college football, top quarterback in college football. Early in his high school career, and he went to high school here in the Houston area too. He was coached by Michael Bishop, who Willie Fritz coached in JUCO and won a junior college national championship with. So that's kind of the tie there between the Houston program and Keyshawn Henderson. But a dual threat guy early in his high school career. He probably wasn't respected as much for his arm. And then in his last couple of years in high school, everybody started to fall in love with his arm. Uber talented, can run. He's got a cannon for an arm. Needs the experience like we talked about earlier, needs the feel for the game. But no, he's a guy where he's got all the potential in the world.
Everyone, when they talk about the whole Sorsby situation at Texas Tech and Hammond getting healthy, points to Game 3, the conference opener, Houston at Texas Tech. How much anticipation is there for that game in Houston, and how much are people going nuts over the quarterback situation at Texas Tech?
Yeah, from the fan base, they're paying attention to it. I think the walls of the athletic office, they're worried about them. But from the fan base's perspective, it's fueling the fire. Tech and Houston has kind of become a pretty bitter rivalry over the years. You have the history, back in the day, the Southwest Conference. Tech and Houston would play some out-of-conference games, too, before Houston's arrival in the Big 12. So it kind of kept the rivalry alive. And then once Houston joined the Big 12, it's kind of made it a natural rivalry across pretty much every sport. Tech has had the best of Houston when it comes to football. So Houston, desperately wants to beat the Red Raiders. How could you not? And then Texas Tech, they look down at Houston. They're not at our level. So it's just the natural fun rivalry of college athletics that really goes across all the sports. So now you see some of the stuff where the fan bases mock each other for whatever it is, and certainly Sorsby's what's dominating the news cycle right now, and the rivalry between Houston and Texas Tech.
How much is there, and I'm sure this is, again, the coaches would never speak to this, but the fact that Houston doesn't play TCU, doesn't play Arizona, doesn't play Arizona State. I mean, it's really at Texas Tech and at Utah. Those are two big games, but the other 7 are manageable, and then if they get even one of the other 2 games, they're in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably, you're right, it's probably more of the fan base conversation.
Don't play BYU either, yeah.
Yeah, I think I think the Big 12 is an underrated league where I think there's pretty good depth across the board, and you see some teams like Houston last year that was, a 4-win team the year prior, and then all of a sudden they win 10 games. I think you could see that from a bunch of different teams around the Big 12. What does Oklahoma State look with their first-year head coach? Does Aranda get a little bit of a bounce back at Baylor? Rich Rod in year 2. Deion's all wild card. Cincinnati's been a team that can win at a high level. Kansas State can be solid. UCF can be really good at times. So I don't really buy into a whole lot to the preseason strength of schedule, just because you have, especially with the transfer portal where you can get good overnight. I don't put a whole lot of stock in this team, their schedule in 2025 had this win percentage. That could flip upside down in 2026. So I don't personally put a whole lot of stock in that. I think from a fan base perspective, you probably do have some of that. Hey, get by this game, and then we're here, and then that gives us a chance to be here. I think that there's a lot of quality coaches in the Big 12 that can flip a lot of their programs, like I said, overnight.
All right, we appreciate the time. Jeremy, thanks for joining us and spelling out what you see with Houston Cougar football. We appreciate it.
You got it. You guys have a good summer.
All right, there's Jeremy Branham talking Houston Cougar football. A reminder to join Scotty G and the coach Tim Lacombe Friday from 10 to 2 at the Larry H. Miller Summer Games in Cedar City. Celebrate 40 years of a Utah sports tradition. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.